Well, they should be concerned until they learn more about it. And secondly, I invite them to do the math for their situation. The mistake that a lot of people make is they assume that it is a one-size-fits-all. When you actually do the numbers, a little different. But no, it is not correct. It is not correct to discuss the sales tax in the same breath we're talking about 999, just like it's not correct to talk about the state sales tax in the same breath you talk about the 82,000 page current tax code. We're replacing that, taking out invisible federal taxes and replacing it with a visible 9% sales tax.
Charles, but let's say you're a senior, you're living on a fixed income, you live on your Social Security, and you're going to pay minimal income taxes, you're going to have a low level of revenue. The corporate taxes won't affect you, but you live in a state that has, say, a 7% sales tax. And along comes President Cain, and when you buy a loaf of bread, you can have a 7 cents on the dollar state sales tax. You can have 9 cents on the dollar Cain tax. You're going to pay 16 cents. So it may be apples and oranges, but it adds up to 16 cents if you're a senior on a fixed income.
Several things. First of all, in our 999 model, seniors don't pay tax on their Social Security benefits. Secondly, if they're receiving income from some capital gains, no tax on capital gains, because we're replacing all of those. But here's the one that is the hardest for most people to really get their head around. And I realize this is a tough sell, but I believe this strongly in the 999 plan. The hidden taxes in that loaf of bread are going to be taken out over time and replaced with that 9%. Most economists understand how these embedded taxes are going to come out, but I understand how people are wrestling with that, but in essence, they're not going to be paying 9%.
So what you're saying is under the Cain plan, we're going to have a deflation?
We're saying that the price of goods are going to go down.
That's deflation.
Yes, the price of goods is going to go down, and they will pay that 9% national sales tax.
AB.
Okay, Mr. Cain, we've heard you clarify your position on abortion, stating that you're pro-life from the moment of conception.
Yes.
Though you had previously stated that abortion is a decision best left to a woman and her family. Should women be legally prohibited from having an abortion?
Let's correct what I said. That statement where people said that I said that it should be left to a woman was taken totally out of context. I believe that abortion should be illegal. I've always felt that way. I believe life begins at conception. And I do not believe in abortion. The point I was trying to make is that legally, I don't believe abortion should be allowed. But the point I was trying to make, if a situation exists where they may consider some other alternative, then how will the law prevent that? That was the only point that I was trying to make.
That if it is left to the woman and her family, you said it was best left to the woman and the family. What are you describing? A situation that they would...
An extreme situation, a very extreme situation.
Involving abortion.
And I can't describe all of these. First of all, these extreme situations, we can never say never relative to these extreme situations. I go back to...
Do you have any exceptions for rape or incest?
No, I do not have any exceptions for rape or incest. No, I do not. I go back to, I believe I'm pro-life from conception. A statement that I made has been taken out of context in order to confuse people. That's where I stand.
Okay. Last question, quick.
One of the things that Republican primary voters are looking for is boldness, and Ron Paul has offered a plan that would eliminate 5 federal government agencies: the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Interior, Education, Commerce, and Agriculture.
Right.
If there were a President Cain, would you keep any of those agencies he's proposed eliminating, and if so, why?
Again, HUD, Interior, Education, Commerce, and Agriculture.
The difference would be how I would go about making that determination. To say that he would eliminate those just on the surface, I wouldn't say that. I would use an approach and go into each one of them and determine which chunks we need to eliminate, and in some instances there may not be anything left. So I don't want to categorically go in. I believe that's irresponsible. You go in and you look at the programs, you make the tough calls to figure out how much of it should be left. So there may be some pieces left.
So you would stay and you would keep them as they are?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I would approach it in a more systematic way to determine how much of those agencies are cut, and whether or not they would still be around.
More with Mr. Herman Cain and our panel in just a minute. Back with Mr. Herman Cain in our center seat segment. We've been asking you to submit questions. Thousands coming in. Tom would like to know, would you stop sending taxpayer money for foreign aid because we're suffering enough here at home?
First, let's start with what my philosophy is, which is peace through strength and clarity, which is an extension of the Reagan philosophy. We need to clarify who our friends are, clarify who our enemies are, and yes, stop giving money to our enemies. We lack clarity relative to foreign policy.
Charles.
A few weeks ago on Greta, you were asked about the Iranian attempt at a terrorist attack on the U.S., what you would do about it, and you responded that I would have acted preemptively ahead of time by placing Aegis cruisers near Iran. How does placing Aegis cruisers affect Iran's determination to use terrorism against the United States?
It won't deter their intent to use terrorism, but what it would do is it would let them know that we are serious if they fire a ballistic missile toward us, although right now they're not supposed to be able to fire it that far, or if they fire it toward any of our friends like Israel, and to let them know that we have this capability. We are the only country in the world that has this capability, capable of ballistic missile defense at sea. And what I would do also is double our fleet. We could double it and not only put them strategically in that part of the world, but also protect our shores to deter them from feeling like that they really wanted to fire a ballistic missile.
But the Aegis is a defensive weapon. It intercepts a missile in flight. Iran doesn't have any that could actually hit the United States now. And moreover, a defensive weapon in no way deters an aggressive action. It could deter a launch of a missile, but it's not going to deter a terrorist campaign.
No, it's not. It wasn't intended to mean that it's going to deter a terrorist campaign, not in the least. My point, the point that I was trying to make was, I'm concerned about their march toward having a nuclear weapon, a march toward having more ballistic missile weapon capability.
But I don't see how Aegis affects even that at all.
Well, the Aegis warships do have the capability with missiles to be able to detect and destroy them if they're detected early enough. Two things here's what needs to happen. The land-based systems already have and more advanced capability than our sea-based systems. They need to be upgraded with a minimal amount of technology upgrade. This is what we have to do first in order to make them much more capable.
Steve.
Iran has been actively harboring senior al-Qaeda leaders for a decade and supporting, financing, training, and equipping terrorists who are killing American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Are those acts of war?
I believe that they're acts of war.
And how would a President Cain respond to those acts of war?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with President Obama's approach in Iraq and Afghanistan. First, I would talk to the commanders on the ground. I've gotten a sense, based upon reports, that his plan to reduce the troop level in Afghanistan, the commanders acted surprised. The same thing in Iraq. It's going to leave a huge power vacuum. So I would have listened to the commanders on the ground first. And secondly, I wouldn't have announced it to the enemy when we were going to leave. Then the other thing that I would have done differently is to make sure that it was clear what our mission was, and it was clear what the definition of victory is. I would approach those decisions a whole lot differently than the current administration.
But if Iran is already trying to fill the power vacuum that you suggest, and they're doing it in ways that you are saying were acts of war,
it's an act of war.
Does that require a military response?
Not necessarily alone. The other thing that I would do, and we are already working on an energy independence plan. As soon as the United States gets serious about energy independence, it's going to put pressure on the price of oil, and it's going to go down. Iran does not want the price of oil to go up, and simply by having a serious energy independence plan, we will put pressure on their economy. This is how we begin to get Iran in check, economically, as well as letting them know what our military might is.
AB.